about the H man who's from the Peacock man?
Yes.
He's going to tell us about an Ipswich attack on Aboriginals, and he met one of those involved down when he was down in Victoria. Hello, H.
Yes, good morning, Danny. I'll be explaining the story. It's a little bit different from what you said, but absolutely it's a piece of history. Last Aboriginal attack in Ipswich history over 100 years ago.
Well, you take it away, young man.
Yeah, because last week I told you about the Ipswich Grammar School principal whose 2 years as headmaster in country Victoria was wiped from history. And the coincidences link him to a ghost down there, but I also told you that he took 2 brothers from Ipswich Grammar with him. Yeah. Well, there was a third boy from Ipswich Grammar who joined them in 1914 for just 1 year, and his name was Douglas Wyper. Now, there's a really interesting story about young Wyper that's worth telling. Firstly, his grandfather was the first head teacher of the Ipswich State School. Wow. His father was Mayor of Bundaberg and chairman of the Queensland National Bank. In fact, when the father died in 1940, his estate was valued at over £91,000, which is $43 million in today's money.
Wow!
And young Wyper himself, he was a solid unit. When he went to Hamilton College in Victoria, he was 14 years old and just 5'1" tall, but already weighed 10 stone.
Holy snap.
When he came back to Ipswich Grammar, he was, of course, a powerhouse in the first 15 rugby team. But his life took a turn for the worse a few years later when he was charged with manslaughter. But don't worry, he got off those charges. But the person who I want to tell you about is young Wyper's mother.
Yes.
Her name was Hortense Wyper, and she was a champion croquet player.
Wow.
In fact, the Mrs. James Wyper Trophy was named in her honour by the Queensland Croquet Association. Now, Hortense had just given birth to young Douglas Wyper 8 weeks earlier, when in 1899 they both became victims of what was Ipswich's last Aboriginal attack of the 19th century. That's when a man called Johnny Logan came to town. He'd been living at the Aboriginal settlement at Deaving Creek. The Indigenous people there were apparently wanting to spear him, so he came to Ipswich. And when he didn't get the cup of tea that he wanted, he ran amok and started attacking the town with a stick in one hand and a tomahawk in the other.
Wow.
He began in a house in the eastern suburbs near Queen's Park, smashing up kitchen crockery, eggs, and anything in his path. One woman and a girl got injured. He then went across the park to John Scott's house in Milford Street. Now, John Scott was Douglas Wyper's... Yeah, well, he was Douglas Wyper's grandfather, the head teacher at Ipswich State School. Well, his daughter Hortense and baby Douglas were in the drawing room when the attack began. A stone crashed through the French lights, followed by more stones. Then a huge rock smashed through a panel of the front door.
Wow.
Hortense feared for her life and, in a state of panic, grabbed baby Douglas and ran next door to the house of Thomas Cribb. Now, of course, Thomas Cribb was a member of the Cribb and Foote families here in Ipswich, and later the Treasurer of Queensland. Now, one of Hortense's brothers chased the attack 100 metres down Roderick Street, tackled him and wrestled with him until the mounted police arrived. But the wonderful part of this story, of this last Aboriginal attack in Ipswich, was how Hortense Wyper reacted following what must have been a harrowing experience in which not only her life was threatened, but also that of a baby. You see, she dedicated the rest of her life to improving Indigenous health, and that was through the Queensland Presbyterian Aboriginal Mission Fund. And she was especially supportive of the Arakoon Mission in North Queensland. So despite that early experience, she just dedicated herself to others, to the people of our community. And Danny, I only found out about this wonderful Ipswich woman, Hortense Wyper, because I was investigating that ghost in country Victoria last week.
Unbelievable. And it's amazing. We didn't realise John Scotty, he worked at 4GR and now owns a couple of restaurants in Brisbane and is on BC sometimes. We didn't realise how old he was.
That's what the very first headmaster at Ipswich State School. The man's a legend. Clearly, he's about 200 years old.
We didn't know he was even a school teacher.
He looks younger.
He does. Scotty, his mum lived 103. She lived at home till she was 100.
Wow.
So, Scotty, you're keeping your age, mate, and Kempy will be shocked as well. Mate, now, that's a great yarn. Where will we find this to read about it?
Yeah, I'm posting this on historyouthere.com. That's there every week. And there's listeners and readers, Danny, that we've got to give a shout out to this week because there's Graham of Muddy Creek in Victoria. He's celebrating his 80th birthday today, and also Michael of Mount Cravat, who's celebrating his 60th birthday. So happy birthday to both Graham and Michael. Keep listening, tell your friends, and read all these stories on historyouthere.com.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant again from Harold the H. Beep, 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 Peacock on West Bremer Radio, 820.